Hi, my name is Mads. I am part of a funded startup. Little brief background on me. I've spent the last 12 years building AI for science. Together with a team, co-founders and wonderful employees, we built a sort of fingerprinting and recommender system for scientific articles, which we sold to academic publishers. We ended up at the peak having 7 of the 10 largest scientific publishers as customers. And I think many times today when you see related articles in the sidebar when you visit articles online, it's something that we're powering, which is privacy friendly and basically just recommends other potentially newer stuff that contains similar phrases and theories and ideas. But throughout that process, I was incredibly frustrated with the state of scientific dissemination, the way articles are spread across the globe, the way ideas are validated or maybe not validated, and the state of peer review, which some of you may have heard of. If you want to hear more backstory, I'm doing a keynote also at 1:30, I think, which will be more sort of my background and very bad ideas that you shouldn't replicate. Oh, this was working just before. So what you're seeing here is basically the pitch that we gave, or at least 2/3 of the pitch we gave to VCs last year, which got us a couple of million euros in funding. So the main problem that we're tackling is that scientific publication is slowing down. We have, on average, around 12-month delay for many reasons between finishing up a manuscript and then seeing it published in a peer-reviewed journal. And this is frustrating everyone involved, but one of the most important reasons why this is happening is because editors on scientific journals cannot find or recruit referees or reviewers for the peer review process. And if you're a young researcher, you also have to go through a few rejections, which causes further delay. And that's not good for science, it's not good for us. Sometimes it means that sometimes some authors will have to wait 12, 24, 36 months before they see published papers that try to refute their findings. The second big problem here is that editors are so overwhelmed because like a country like China actually puts out more than 1 million PhDs every year, new PhDs, who want to be published in the leading journals. So it's come so far that some of the editors are actually openly acknowledging that they just reject people based on ethnicity or country of origin because they simply cannot cope with the sheer volume. I actually spent my last 3 years at my previous startup after we got acquired building software to screen. And what we learned essentially was that the primary use case for that screening product was to make rejection letters, an automated process. That's not fair. And so we're in the midst of a big move towards open access, which means essentially an author pays model. So rather than universities paying, as they do now, 1 billion Danish kroner a year for students and researchers at our public institutions to just read the stuff that they actually wrote and their colleagues wrote. We're now in a model where the author pays to publish in order to get to ensure that manuscripts stay open access. But the problem is that's a global marketplace and it's costing upwards of $2,000 just to get published, and that's paying for peer review. And this is creating like really unfair barriers against the global south or developing economies where that kind of money is a lot of money. And it also creates bad incentives. So we have this thing we call predatory journals, which are essentially journals that have a name that sound like something that you would want to be published in, and they take your money and then they don't do peer review and publish it somewhere in an RSS feed. Fortunately, the last few years have seen some opportunities arise. We've seen a 10x increase in open content growth. This is not just open access papers. This is also a result of publishers now acknowledging that they need the business intelligence. So they're now basically encouraging publishing authors to also publish a preprint, which is not a copyrighted version of their manuscript at the time it was submitted to the journal. And this preprint content is actually becoming the most important content. I guess for you that do computer science-y stuff, you're probably reading everything off of arXiv, which is a preprint server. So these articles there are not peer-reviewed, but who gives a fuck? Because you can just download the code and run it, and if it works, it works. In other domains, that's not quite the case, so people are still clinging on to peer review even though it's broken. But that's a different story. We've also seen that people who basically tweet about their papers get cited 4 times as much as people who don't. I think that's kind of a double-edged sword because it means that dissemination on Twitter really works. It also means that people are citing people and basing their citings on what's in their feed, which is really fucking bad. Because you should like pick the most relevant papers and cite them, not the stuff that just happens to be thrown at you. So I'm kind of doing amends here because I built all these recommender systems that lead people down the most trodden path towards the papers that everyone reads, which is not good for scientific progress. But there is a huge readership. Our estimate is around 1 billion readers. In the US, we found some Pew studies that said that actually 1/5 of the American populace has been involved in citizen science activities in the recent year. So that means giving blood or attending a conference or somehow providing data for a study. So there is an engaged readership for popular science. And now with AI, we can actually transform content and make it more accessible. So we want to build something on top of that. Right now, we've built this thing that allows you to read an article really fast, or actually not read it. It allows you to skip reading an article really fast. We provide what you think is a title, which is really just a one-line summary of the key finding. And then if you think that sounds interesting, you can dive a little deeper with a 3 or 4 sentence summary. And if you want to dive even deeper, you can just talk to the paper, essentially. Say, what was the cohort size? How did they recruit participants? Why did they choose regression as their method? And to the extent the answer is there in the full text, you can get an answer without ever opening the PDF. So that's our primary use case. But of course, everything in the end is what we call B2B SaaS. So we have to have a way to make money. No one's going to pay for that. Now it doesn't work again. So we have an offering for teams, basically what we call collaborative discovery. So instead of looking at that sort of Google Drive with a ton of PDFs in it, I've built tech teams for 20 years, and we always end up with a pile of PDFs. So when new employees arrive, we say, just this is what we're reading, have a look, and then maybe comment. It's on Confluence. You can just add your comments. No one ever does that, because everyone starting in a new job is too intimidated to say anything without having first read the full text and thought carefully about it. And if there's 100 papers in that Drive folder, no one gets around to reading anything. So there are no comments, there are no reflection. And really what we want is a system where you're looking forward into the future and commenting on what might be a promising new discovery together with your colleagues. So that's what we're building right now. Sorry. A few weeks ago, we launched this first little thing to probe at the audience. You've probably tried ChatGPT. You've probably maybe tried Perplexity or some of the other answer engines. So this is a thing that's become quite popular. Ask a question, and instead of just having a generative answer that is maybe true, we actually are working with a partner that has a huge database of papers. And so we do a query into the database, retrieve what we believe are relevant papers. We re-rank them using fancy technology. And then we say to the AI, here are 5 papers. Can you try to answer the user's question based on these? If the papers are not relevant, please say so and don't invent an answer. And so you can go in here and you can ask about anything that could potentially be covered in a scientific study. And you'd be surprised at what people have actually studied throughout the history of modern science. So you can actually get pretty good answers to almost any question. I guess we're probably currently around 80% success rate. So this was a good stab at this use case. We present the references, so we write really crisp answers, then present a list of the articles that we use to construct the answer. We're right now working on highlighting the exact phrases that come from or have foundation in each of these papers, so you can track, oh, this comes from Cole, exactly what's that, paper 3. And then what we found actually to be sort of a key unlock here is that we create some really nice follow-up questions. So you don't have to type questions. We actually have some, like, based on this answer, what would be your next question? How would you want to dive deeper? And because these are dynamically generated, you can take any path of inquiry. You can ask your own question also. But this actually works pretty neat, at least for sort of high school grade inquiries. And you can also get access to the paper and talk about that from this interface. Yeah, so I think the key value proposition here is basically this Teams feed. If you know some small teams who want to be part of a nice pilot, please DM me or come up after and let me know. We're recruiting small teams for this, preferably 3 to 10 people. So please come up. We'll be launching that pilot around July 1st. And as I said, we were funded late last year. We're now building our team out. So we're currently 8 people with 3 developers, me and 2 product people, and our Chief of Staff and CEO, Geet. So thank you for your attention. That's Proem. And the product is out, and you can try it if you want and provide feedback.
Thank you so much, Mads. That was amazing and very relevant for a lot of people in this room, I think. Do we have any questions? Surprise, surprise.
The small teams, are those researchers or startups that coincidentally use research?
So we're a tech startup.
Yeah.
And so I think 2 of our 3 tech people have computer science masters, no PhDs. My last company, we were building deep tech, so stuff that didn't exist. Now we're just building on top of basically off-the-shelf stuff and trying to build a platform rather than technology. We're really open. I think it's nice if you're like already reading research and believe that's necessary. That's kind of that's the target demographic. So please do send me a DM.
Who has the next question? Yeah.
First, thank you for the presentation. My question is, who is your target customer and what is your revenue model? How do you make money?
This is interesting because actually we didn't expect to find any VCs who would back this, at least not in Denmark. Our revenue model is somewhat later in the game. We're building an open platform. This feature set that we've shown you is going to be free forever. Up to a certain team size, it's going to be free. It's also going to be transparent and open. You can follow anyone like you would on Twitter, I guess. We're going to record all the interactions that people have with papers. They're going to be public on a blockchain, so they can't be modified. We're negotiating which chain to put them on. So that's all going to be free. But if you want privacy, which most corporate customers will want, so get a room to have your conversation, proper encryption, etc., that's going to cost. So that's the main revenue model. But we think it's going to be a while to get there because there needs the kind of inertia to have enough people on the platform, to have enough comments that it actually adds value to see what other people have said about a certain paper. There's about 7,000 papers every day that are published, or preprints that become papers, most of them. And of course, that takes a certain volume. Even in computer science, where maybe it's a couple of hundred a day, it still takes a lot of people to ask proper questions that can be valuable for other people to check out. But that's kind of the game. I guess it wasn't fun to have the first telephone either. Yeah.
We have a question over here. An online question.
the question is, how does your product differ from Perplexity?
So Perplexity basically is going after Google, and they're just like there are many search products, and Google is just the most ubiquitous one. Perplexity is one of many of these retrieval augmented answer engines. But the big difference between what they do and what we do is that they will cite anything. They will cite a YouTube video. They will cite CNN.com. So they don't have a preference for the kind of references they use to construct answers. We are strictly using, right now, actually published papers to construct the answers, which also means that we're kind of behind because we require a certain number of citations before we use it to respond to a query.
Yeah.
I checked that in Perplexity there is a filter that you can just filter for scientific papers and published papers. But I think the problem maybe is that somehow this ChatGPT or generative AI generates some papers that is false. There is no such paper, but it generates and cited a fake paper. And do you handle this fake paper citation?
Yeah, we check our output that it's not referencing stuff that isn't in the set of papers that we provide to the model. So whenever we ask the model to come up with, like, what are you basing this on? And if it mentions something that isn't in the set, then that obviously is a good indication. We find, though, that with the right balance of the right amount of text, the right amount of prompting and fine-tuning, it is pretty low in hallucinations. So other people have tested, I think, ChatGPT 4 at 97% accuracy in summarization. And I think that is around the ballpark. And I think we shouldn't forget, like, what we call the tragedy of the status quo. Humans also make mistakes, and you also find really bad things on Google. I think the difference that we're trying to do to make over Perplexity is that they're a consumer service going mainly after very broad use cases, where what we're trying to do is actually use the attention and the answers here to drive public attention into research to fulfill a sort of a larger goal of becoming a platform for dissemination and for reflection on papers. And that's, so we believe we're a deeper play and have better reasons to become attractive to researchers. So the main shtick is kind of, we can basically email authors every week saying this many people looked at your paper, this and this many people asked really good questions, we answered them like this based on the full text. If you want to add to that, please come onto the platform. And I think most people who spent a year producing 6 pages of text will have something they want to add whenever an AI constructs an answer. So really what we're trying to do is not necessarily provide final answers. That's also why we're choosing very short replies that people will actually read in full, and then allowing them to drill on a knowledge path of their own, because it encourages and unfolds the complexity. If you ask any scientist about any piece of fact, you will always get a long and weaving set of caveats before they finally say, so maybe possibly if you're at sea level, at room temperature, possibly water will boil at 100 degrees Celsius. But you can't get a scientist to provide a crisp answer. And I think that is part of the problem we're trying to address. It's okay to say yes or no, and then you can say, but what about? What about if you're like below normal height? What if your skin color is really dark? And then we're trying to unfold that complexity by deliberately providing short answers.
That was a long answer. We'll get the next question from over here.
You answered my question as well. So.
Fantastic.
Cool.
So because it was a long answer, you actually answered this one.
Yeah, maybe we should consider that for product design.
Yeah. Anyone else have a question?
Thank you for the presentation. Could we use this system to detect plagiarism on the papers, or?
I think the short answer is no. The long answer is potentially someday, using the data set that we built. I think we're betting on a change in culture. We think that, for too long, we've placed our faith in like the 2 people who say yes to being a referee and spend a few hours looking through something and checking for grammar errors, where in fact we should be using like the wisdom of everyone who's interested in a particular field to do the refereeing of content. I have a few professors in my family who keep complaining that every time they want to publish something, they will get assigned 2 26-year-olds who are more or less straight out of college and who believe they can get a foot up with an editor by working for free. And then they have to teach them all about their field before they can critique their work. And that's a system that is simply not working. So we think that like something needs to change, and that's basically our motivation.
Thanks.
Did you have a follow-up? All good.
What are the scientific databases you use to feed your engine?
So we're primarily, there's actually a number of different actors in this space, and we're benchmarking them against each other. Several of them are publicly funded, some are funded by foundations, and we've used several different engines in the past. Currently, we're partnering with a database or aggregator called OpenAlex, which has, I think, currently the largest collection and the fastest APIs. But there are many others. There's in the UK. There's Core, which also does a really good job of collecting preprints from I think 15,000 different sources. But there is no good reader for everything presently, and that's also part of the promise here.
We have time for one more question. Do anyone want to add something? If not, I think it's time to thank Mads for sharing about ProemAI.
Thank you for your time.